In a small town in America, there is a forest known as Blackwood Forest. This forest is always shrouded in thick fog, creating a mysterious atmosphere that deters many from entering. Despite this, some still dare to explore, drawn by the terrifying stories that have circulated for years. One of the most famous tales is about a figure known as Slender Man. Slender Man is described as a very tall and thin man, dressed in a black suit with a tie. His body is so slender that he almost appears as a shadow. His face is pale and featureless, without eyes, nose, or mouth. But the most frightening aspect of Slender Man is his unnatural presence. He seems to be able to appear anywhere, without warning, the edge of your sight, or in the corners of your eye. The legend of Slender Man is said to originate from local folklore, but its popularity exploded when the story emerged on the internet, especially on forums dedicated to horror stories and supernatural creatures. In early 2009, Slender Man began appearing in digitally manipulated images, showing his terrifying figure lurking behind children or standing in gloomy forests. Many believe that Slender Man is a product of collective imagination, born from humanity's desire to create a figure that embodies the fear of the unknown. However, as more stories circulated, more people claimed to have seen Slender Man with their own eyes. Clara was a teenager living on the outskirts of town, not far from Blackwood Forest. Like most young people in the area, she grew up hearing stories about Slender Man, but never took them seriously. To her, it was just a scary story her friends told to frighten each other. However, Clara's curiosity couldn't be contained when her friend Julie invited her to explore the forest. Julie was a big fan of horror stories and claimed to have seen signs of Slender Man's presence in the woods. Although hesitant, Clara eventually agreed, thinking it would just be a harmless little adventure. On a cold, foggy night, Clara and Julie entered Blackwood Forest. They brought flashlights and a camera, planning to record whatever they found. The forest was silent, with only the sound of dry leaves crunching underfoot. The thick fog made visibility very limited, only a few meters ahead. After walking for a while, they found a small clearing in the middle of the forest. Clara felt her skin prickle as she noticed something strange. On the trees surrounding them, there were strange marks etched into the bark. These marks formed bizarre symbols they didn't understand, but they felt unsettling. It must be the work of some pranksters. Clara tried to reassure herself. Though her heart was pounding, suddenly Julie stopped. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Clara strained her ears. At first, there was nothing. But then, in the distance, there was a sound like a branch snapping. The noise was followed by an oppressive silence. They looked at each other anxiously. "We need to get out of here," Julie said, her voice trembling. But before they could turn around, Clara felt something cold and heavy in the air. Her heart beat faster, and without realizing it, she turned towards the direction the sound had come from. In the distance, through the fog, she saw something tall and thin. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching them. "Julie," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. "We need to leave now." Julie looked in the same direction, her mouth open, but no words came out. They both knew what they were seeing. Without thinking, they ran, leaving behind the camera and whatever else they had brought. They ran as fast as they could, with only one thought in their minds: get out of that forest. They didn't stop until they reached the edge of the forest, gasping for breath and trembling with fear. Even though they were out of the forest, Clara felt as if she was still being watched. The shadow of that figure continued to haunt her thoughts, and for days after the event, she felt something lurking in the corners of her eyes every time she was in the dark. After that experience, Clara no longer dismissed the stories about Slender Man. In fact, she began to have nightmares about the figure. In her dreams, she was always in the forest, surrounded by thick fog, and Slender Man was always there, lurking, getting closer, silently. Every time she woke up, she felt exhausted and uneasy. Julie, on the other hand, began withdrawing from her friends and family. She often seemed lost in thought, and when she spoke, her voice was often empty, as if her mind was elsewhere. Both girls became increasingly isolated, trapped in a fear that only they seemed to understand. Clara's parents, who initially thought this was just typical teenage fear, began to worry when Clara started complaining about strange noises at night. She said she could hear footsteps outside her bedroom window, even though every time she checked, there was no one there. They decided to move Clara to her aunt's house in another town, hoping a change of scenery would help. Even so, fear did not go away. At her aunt's house, Clara still felt Slender Man's presence, even though she knew it wasn't possible. The fear had become ingrained in her mind, becoming a part of her reality, couldn't be easily shaken off. Clara and Julie's story was just one of many similar tales that began to surface from various places across the country. Some skeptics claimed that this was all a result of mass suggestion, that the internet and horror stories had influenced teenagers' minds, creating delusions about a creature that never existed. However, some paranormal researchers took a more serious approach. They proposed theories that Slender Man might be a creature from another dimension or a form of negative energy that gains strength from human fear. Some even suggested that Slender Man was a kind of supernatural meme, an entity created and empowered by collective belief. Regardless of the explanation behind this phenomenon, one thing was certain: the legend of Slender Man had become an inseparable part of modern horror culture. He is a symbol of the fear of the unknown, fear of darkness and what might be lurking within it. Conclusion: Clara and Julie's story may just be a tale, or perhaps part of a larger truth that we do not yet understand. Whether Slender Man truly exists or is merely a product of human imagination, he has succeeded in planting deep-seated fear in the hearts of many. For Clara, the shadow of Slender Man will continue to haunt her, serving as a reminder that some things are better left unexplored or unchallenged, because when we do, we may find more than we bargained for. And for those who dare to enter Blackwood Forest, Slender Man will always be an unseen threat. Tall and thin figure, lurking in the fog, waiting for the right moment to appear. Take what he desires.